I've always enjoyed the night. Staying up late into the thick dark of the evening, going for a drive while listening to music and having a cigarette, watching TV shows or movies in the blue light glow of the television set, ordering cheap and greasy food from hole-in-the-wall establishments lit by buzzing neon lights, drinking beer or whiskey or wine until my head swims, smoking weed or alternating my consciousness in some less usual way. These have all been habitual pastimes for me for many years. By myself or with friends, I love the late hours and the quiet electricity they hold, the slight feeling that I should be in bed, that I shouldn't be out. The whole world is asleep, but not me. It gives me a hint of misbehaving, of being bad, even if what I'm doing is quite plain. I don't care. I love it. But out in the night, strange and dangerous things dwell. I suppose that's part of the allure of it, the heightened risk that we recognize down at the core level of our being, deep within our DNA. Once the sun sets and the darkness falls, the chance of death at the talons or teeth of some stealth and unseen predator, the chance that the world will swallow you whole, like an insignificant little morsel, never to be seen again, is at least tenfold that of daylight. We all know this. It's why so many of us are afraid of the dark. It's why so many of us are, like I said before, excited by it. We venture out into it regardless. Bathed in pale moonlight, we risk life, limb, and lucidity. Most of us make it out just fine. Some of us, though, pay a dear price for our hubris. Some never return. Some do, but whether this is the most desirable fate is not always so clear. I'll tell you my story and let you decide. It was the late fall of 2006. I was still young, reckless, and sure of my immortality. But all of that had started to wane. College was over. I had done my traveling throughout the far corners of the earth, run out of money, and been forced to return home to my sleepy little town, seated at the foot of the Berkshires in the far western end of Massachusetts. My high school friends had all moved on to bigger and better places. The few acquaintances remaining had begun to grow older, start families, lose their passion for life, and fade into the dull gray background of small-town existence. After places like New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, and Thailand, this was a cold and depressing limbo for someone with my taste for living. Life as I had known it was coming to an end. It was time to move on to the bleak and grinding continuance pined for by so many lifeless individuals, without so much as an iota of imagination to spur them forward to greater things. I thought I was destined for greatness, but no. Maybe I was just another victim of the self-esteem movement, just another poor sap who thought he would be a rock star or movie god. Just another sad story of disappointment. It hurt. It really hurt. But coming to terms with it was important. So important that I decided to completely ignore it. I spent my nights driving around aimlessly, listening to strange albums full of weird songs, smoking pot and sipping cheap whiskey. I just wanted to feel rebellious and free again. It was nothing but a dollar store replacement, but it was better than sitting home, watching the same old movies, reading the same old books, and dreaming the same old pie-in-the-sky dreams that weren't coming true anytime soon. So I drove. I drove and I drove and I drove, trying to outrun it all, slipping through the pale streetlight like a snake through the velvety black, getting lost on roads I'd never driven before, finding my way back hours later, only after I'd haphazardly stumbled into some area that fit my recollection. This went on for a period of time that is simply nebulous to me now. It felt like months, but was probably more like weeks. I don't know. I really don't anymore. What I do remember clearly is a night that I became hopelessly lost. I went so far down some forgotten old back road, deep into the forested recesses of the hills, that I thought I'd never find my way out again. Part of me hoped I'd die in there. It might have been something to just vanish into some backwoods Bermuda Triangle, never to be seen or heard from again. It would at least be an interesting way to go out. But that wasn't to be. Instead, I found out firsthand what kind of demons truly inhabit the night. After driving for hours through mazes of crumbling and forgotten roads inhabited by ramshackle structures more appropriately referred to as dwellings than homes, the road I was on began to slope steeply downward and turn around a sharp bend. The effect was to totally cut me off from the rest of existence. At the bottom of the hill was an open area, a rough sort of cul-de-sac that, instead of having defined edges or curbs, simply melted into the tangled undergrowth that surrounded it. I decided that this was my type of place, thoroughly abandoned, mostly forgotten, and completely removed from the rest of the godforsaken world that so disappointed me. I shifted the car into park and leaned back into my seat. Reaching for the radio, I turned the little black knob that controlled volume. I opened my windows and let the music spill out into the darkness. It was a kind of drug-fueled jazz that sounded like noise to all but the trained ear, and instilled a feeling of approaching chaos and doom in the listener. It fit perfectly. I took a sip of the whiskey I had in the center console, and then a pull of the bowl that sat quietly next to it. I shut my eyes and let the night fill me up. I had no idea how to get back home, or if I'd even recognize the way if I stumbled upon it in my current state of mind. It didn't matter, though. I was enjoying the moment too much. I don't know when I first realized it, but eventually I became conscious of a feeling that the car was drifting slowly forward. I opened my eyes to find that it was, indeed, creeping gradually towards a large oak at the edge of the clearing. I checked the shifter and found it securely in park. I pressed the brake pedal, but nothing happened. I reached down for the handbrake, but it didn't budge. I jiggled and shook it side to side with no success. Then, as my head was down, trying to figure out why it wasn't moving, I heard the windows begin to roll up on their own. I clawed out with my fingers, but it was too late. Not that the buttons would have worked anyway. I sat, stunned and silent, trying to decide just what the hell was happening. I tried the doors, but they were locked and wouldn't open. I was looking for something to smash the window with, when I saw the eyes. Eyes in the woods behind the tree. Lots of them. I froze. They gleamed like flames in the lights of the car's headlamps. I could feel their pull, their beckoning. It reached deep into the furthest recesses of my being, grabbed hold, and dragged me forward. It was the will of whatever was behind those eyes that was moving my car. The bumper finally came to a rest again in front of the gnarled old tree. Although it stopped its forward motion, I could still feel the vehicle trying to pull against it. As I sat there in the driver's seat, still as death, the eyes began to move closer. Outlines of bodies began to emerge. The first that took shape was a young man with shards of glass lodged into the skin of his face and the top left corner of his head missing. His left arm was torn off at the shoulder. Bits of back top were lodged into both wounds. Next came a woman of about 20, withered thin to the point of emaciation. Her sunken purple eyes glared at me vacantly, while her leathery yellow skin sagged around them. Blood flowed from her nose, and a needle dangled carelessly out of her arm. Flanking them on the right was a boy of about 17. His white shirt pocket marked with little, charred holes surrounded by large red stains. Blood still oozed rhythmically from the wounds. Beneath them seemed countless more, Some showed vicious stab wounds, others clearly met their fate at the hands of boots and fists. Even more showed obvious signs of brutal accidents, and still others had been slowly sucked down by chemical indulgences. Each was a gruesome yet clear victim of the savageries of the night. They gradually surrounded the car, like quicksand slowly swallowing a helpless animal. The original 3 victims led the pack and stepped right up to the driver's side window, their breath fogging the glass. They stared inward, locking their gaze with mine, eyes still burning that unnatural yellow-green glow.
"What do you want?"
asked a growling voice inside my head. It was the first victim I saw speaking. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. I simply sat there, frozen, not knowing how to respond.
"What do you want?"
The same voice repeated, only much louder this time. I don't know, I cried back in a voice I couldn't hold firm. I was petrified. It was like being trapped in a car a mile under the ocean, surrounded by sharks.
"You too,"
the woman hissed. I just want to get out of here and have some fun. That's it, I swear.
"That's not what we're asking,"
sneered the boy with the gunshots.
"What is it you want?"
He yelled it so loud I thought my head would split open. It felt like daggers behind my eyes. I cried and squirmed, squeezing my eyes shut and pressing my hands against each other. "I don't know what you mean." I finally got out.
"You too,"
the woman hissed again. Her voice sounded like meat frying. I could feel searing heat on my skin and inside my brain. "No, I don't," I shouted back defiantly. I felt anger rising within me. I turned to look at them with a scowl, burying my fear. The one with the head wound and missing arm leaned closer, staring straight into my eyes. He seemed amused, as if he were looking right through me and out the other side. A smirk sat on his bleeding face. It widened to a grin. Then it felt like someone injected molten lead into my skin. Pain like I'd never felt before erupted inside me. My brain felt like it was being dissolved in battery acid. I clawed my jaw so hard I chipped teeth. I squirmed and writhed and tried to scream, but nothing came out except stranded little whimpers. I sat imprisoned in this hell for what seemed like eternity, but was likely only seconds. The pain stopped as abruptly as it had started. Gasping for breath and soaked in sweat, I came back to the situation.
"What is it that you want? Why are you out here? What is it that you're looking for?"
Growled Headwound. I could feel the pain beginning again, so I just spoke. "I want excitement. I want adventure. I want to have fun again. I don't want to sit in this boring limbo anymore. I can't stand it. I need to get the hell out. I'm sorry I came here. I'm sorry." The atmosphere became very quiet, like someone turned the intensity down from a few pitches to a low, foreboding hum. It was somehow worse this way. Headwound grinned again. So did Needle and Gunshot. So did every single one of them.
"It sounds like you want to be one of us,"
Headwound said in my brain. No, I didn't. I don't want to be like you. I want to live."
"You want to live
"Yes,"
and stay out of the night."
he said again with a smirk.
"It's ours. It belongs to us. To our kind."
His words echoed in my head as if underwater, as if I were drowning. "Okay, I will. I promise. I'll never go out again. Just let me go, please." Then they all stood back. They stood still, gazing off into the distance as if deep in thought. One hive-mind jury working together as one to return its verdict. Then Head Wound leaned forward and smiled again.
We don't believe you.
I'm telling you the truth. I mean it. I'll stay in. I'll be better. I mean it.
Your kind never tell the truth.
He grumbled.
We know.
He showed his bloody grin again, then looked around at his grim compatriots.
But we'll give you one chance.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. I practically prayed to that disgusting thing.
However, we must take payment for your trespassing. Otherwise, how will you learn?
What? What do you mean? I didn't know I was trespassing. I'm sorry. My pleading screams went unanswered. Instead, they all took a large step back, but kept their burning yellow eyes fixed on the car. I felt the pull on the car increase exponentially, pressing the bumper against the tree with staggering force. At the same time, my body was pinned to the driver's seat, as if strapped to a gurney with leather belts. I couldn't move below the neck. The pull on the car kept on growing and growing. I could feel the force multiplying, as if something were feeding it rocket fuel. The front end of the car began to crumble. The hood creaked and folded like an accordion. The sound of twisting metal rang in my ears. In spite of it all, the car kept moving forward, the enormous dent in the front end moving closer and closer to the driver's seat. The dashboard cracked. Jagged lines spread through the cheap, thin plastic like bolts of lightning. I watched as the steering column shifted unnaturally to the left, pushing forward towards my leg. The car kept crushing itself against the tree trunk. The steering column inched closer to my knee. I tried desperately to move, but my legs may as well have been made of stone. Panicked, I thrashed my head from side to side and screamed like a madman. None of that made one lick of difference. The steering column slowly drove itself into my kneecap. I felt the pressure build, the ache intensify. I screamed louder, with all my will. I attempted to squirm away, but my body wouldn't respond. I felt my kneecap shatter. Still, the car kept pushing forward. It just kept going, mangling itself and my leg. I had lost all semblance of reason or sanity at this point, diminishing to nothing more than an animal in a trap. I thrashed until I pulled muscles in my neck, screamed until I tasted blood, and ground my teeth until I chipped them even more. Finally, the car stopped, the windshield a mere yard from the tree trunk. I looked down at what was left of my leg. It was twisted at a gruesome, unnatural angle, broken in many places, blood steadily flowing from the wounds. In some places, I could see bone. My mind went black. I drifted in and out of consciousness until the rescue team arrived. They say I called them on my cell phone, but I don't remember doing so, nor can I figure out how I was able to convey to them where I was. The herd of ghosts were gone by the time they arrived, having disappeared at some point during my brutal wait. One more piece of the story that I don't remember. The firemen, police, and paramedics all just assumed I had crashed the car. It certainly looked that way, and I sure wasn't going to try to tell them the truth. In the end, I was brought to the hospital and stabilized. My left leg had to be amputated. It was just too mangled to be saved. I suppose it was a small price to pay to keep my life, though it's a constant reminder of that night. I was also charged while driving under the influence and reckless operation. Since, miraculously, this was my first offense, and I'd paid so dearly for it already, the judge was lenient. I was sentenced to a year of probation, and my license was revoked for the same period of time. I also checked myself into rehab as soon as I was physically able. As I write this, 15 years later, I have settled down to a plain and simple suburban life in my hometown at the far west end of Massachusetts, nestled in the shadow of the Berkshire Plateau. Things are boring and usual. Like so many others, I've faded into the gray background of the normal, Walking Dead existence. There is no more excitement. There are no more wild nights with friends or alone. I work a well-paying 9 to 5. I have a wife and 2 kids, a house with a yard, a pool, and a golden retriever. My life would be considered ideal to many of the dull, shambling stiffs that shuttle themselves through daily life here. But I'm not so sure. I'm alive. I'm well. But the call of the night still beckons me. The excitement that it holds still sits vividly in my mind, tugging at me like the lingering, psychological withdrawal of a long-gone drug habit. The itch of my phantom limbs reminds me daily of my past trespass, of my old life. If I could go back to it, I would, in a heartbeat. But I know what waits for me out there. I know the price I would pay if I were to return. Sometimes I still contemplate it. Sometimes I think it would be worth it. Worth it to venture back out into the inky dark. Back out into the electric unknown. Back out to stand defiantly, face to face, with whatever predators lurk out there in the depths of the night. The handwritten sign plastered to my door was not something I could miss. Rent due on Monday. Don't be late this time. Living with my best friend's sister had been working out reasonably well, and to be fair, I felt terrible about being behind on rent so often. But I still wished Hazel would find a less passive-aggressive way of reminding me. If only my parents had bought me my own place after I'd graduated college, I'd get to be the one behaving like an overprivileged prick, I reflected, before tearing the sign off the door and entering my bedroom. I flopped down onto my bed, exhausted after another morning of fruitless job searching. I knew I would have to face facts. Things were getting tough, and I would simply have to accept anything that came along, sooner rather than later. All I had to show for my efforts today was that interview at the fast food place scheduled for next week. As I got comfortable, I heard a crunching sound in my pocket and remembered the flyer that I'd been given earlier. I took it out and looked at it again. I'd been handed this piece of paper by some random guy as I was leaving the subway. I'd taken it more out of politeness than anything else, fully intending to throw it in the next garbage can I came across. Now, actually, taking the time to read it, I was glad I hadn't done that. There were scarcely any details, but there was enough information to pique my interest. Exciting job opportunity for the right candidate. Excellent pay. No experience required. Call this number. Well, I am at the point where I just need to do something to bring money in, so why the hell not? Hopefully this was said just loud enough for Hazel to overhear. Anyway, what harm could it do to give a number a call? I thought to myself. And so I dialed the number. The person on the other end picked up immediately. "Good afternoon, Mr. Featherstone." A female voice, not particularly unpleasant to the ear, but not hinting at any emotion either. "Yes, hello. Wait a minute. How do you know my name?" "This is the Mr. Featherstone who received our contact details in the tube station earlier today, is it not?" "Yes, but—" "We're happy that you have chosen to get back to us so quickly, Mr. Featherstone. We would like to schedule an appointment to discuss this opportunity with you later this afternoon. The location is only about a 10-minute walk from your apartment. Will 2:30 this afternoon be good for you?" How does she know where I live? I mused. This was all extremely weird, but those 2 words, excellent pay, were enough to motivate me. "Sure, Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Please come to the following address at that time. Mr. Elliot is eager to meet you.
What harm could it do to go along? I thought to myself. It was just another corner, after all. What the hell am I doing here? I thought, sitting in the lobby of an old but elegant office building, which was indeed only a few minutes away from where I lived. The men at the front desk had ignored me, apart from pointing in the direction of the bench I was now sitting on. The building was so nondescript that I could honestly say I had never even acknowledged its existence, despite having walked past it hundreds of times in the last couple of years. However, I didn't have much time to ponder this, as I was soon greeted by the imposing figure of the gentleman who had requested my presence. Mr. Featherstone, so nice of you to come at such short notice. Call me Mike, please. No, I shall stick to Mr. Featherstone. Mine is a business that requires formality. I'm sure you'll come to understand this soon enough. This was a man to not be messed with. That much I could tell. Now, do follow me to my office. Again, this was non-negotiable. Mr. Elliot was already halfway there. I broke into a light jog, not wanting to seem rude by lagging behind. Now, take a seat, Mr. Featherstone. Thanks, I said, withdrawing the copy of my resume from my bag in preparation for the coming interview. Perhaps I can give you this. That won't be necessary, Mr. Featherstone. We are already somewhat familiar with you as a candidate. We don't make offers such as this to random strangers. Well, okay then. Thank you for... I was once again cut off. This is not an interview in the conventional sense. I will explain our requirements. I will discuss the financial compensation. Then, you should be given time to consider this information before coming to a decision. Mr. Elliot then looked directly into my eyes, pausing his little speech. Okay, Mr. Elliot. I was at a complete loss as to what to do or say at this point. Good. Now here's my offer to you. Hazel, are you in there? I asked, knocking on her bedroom door. A few seconds later, she groggily opened it. Mike, you know I work nights. Is it important? Damn, I'd forgotten about her shift work. Sorry, Hazel. I just wanted to pay up for what I owe. Here you go. I handed over an envelope stashed with my, for once, not overdue rent. Jesus, Mike. In cash? Did you rob a bank or something? I couldn't help but smile. Not quite. Look, something's come up, and they paid me in advance for my first gig. So, there you go. I don't think I want to ask any more questions, do I? Maybe not. I couldn't help but feel a little sheepish. Handing over a sizable wad of cash must have looked a little odd, I had to admit. Don't worry, though. It is legit. Hazel gave me a slight smile in response, the first time she'd done that to me in a long while. Thanks, Mike. Oh, and sorry about the note earlier. You know how I can get sometimes. Think nothing of it. She widened her smile, then closed her door. Things were looking up already. All I had to do now was wait for the call. 2 days, Elliot had said. Friday evening, just before midnight, at the address given. It all sounded simple enough. I would be working as a personal assistant to an exceptional client of Mr. Elliot's, and would be there for a short period to help him out in whatever way necessary. This would be a one-off occasion, after which I would not see that particular client again, unless requested to do so. As a gesture of goodwill, I had been paid in advance for this first assignment. He hadn't been kidding when he said the pay was good. If this went well, I was at the very least out of financial trouble for a while. Of course, the goodwill gesture did come with a caveat. Even if I decided to quit after the first assignment, I'd have to go through with this one job, whatever it entailed. Now, time to wait and see what adventures Friday night would bring. Where was this place? It wasn't that the address had been hard to find, it was just that I couldn't imagine anyone wanting to be here, let alone some exclusive clients of Mr. Elliot. This was smack in the middle of the city's most dilapidated industrial estate. I'd gotten an Uber to as close as possible, but even the driver wouldn't bring me all the way to the door. I'd had to walk the last half-mile or so and was in real danger of being late. What was going on here? I approached the door, feeling more than mild trepidation. Before I had the chance to knock, the door was opened, and a giant of a man stepped out to greet me. Hi, I'm... Once again, I didn't get the chance to finish my sentence.
First door on the left. Get changed and await instructions. Be quick about it.
The security guard then bundled me inside and slammed the door behind me. I found the room and entered. Whatever I might have expected to see, it certainly wasn't this. A full hazmat suit. This thing was the real deal, too. I was starting to get more of an idea as to why I had been paid so handsomely. No job requiring me to wear this would be easy or pleasant.
I'd make sure you put that on properly, Mr. Featherstone.
I recognized that voice. I was starting to understand that it was also one I was never likely to forget. Mr. Elliot? What the hell are you doing here?
As I stated, a significant client of mine has need of your assistance. He can be found on the 3rd floor. Your assignment is merely to perform what I like to refer to as post-task completion.
What? If his intention was to confuse me, it was certainly working.
Think of it this way. If someone were cooking a meal, the meal itself would be the fulfillment of the task. Sitting down with a loved one, cutting into that steak, and enjoying a nice glass of red is what the whole experience is about. Of course, no one wants to think about washing the dishes afterwards. Nonetheless, the dishes need to be cleaned. This is what I mean by post-task completion.
So, I'm here to clean up afterwards?
Yes, Mr. Featherstone. Indeed you are.
The creepiest smile I had ever seen slowly emerged in Elliot's expression. Now, as this is your first assignment, I'll be accompanying you to make sure all goes smoothly. I had a feeling I wasn't going to be washing dirty dishes. I followed Elliot to the elevator. He pressed 3, and we began our ascension. Mr. Elliot exited and made his way to a door some way down to the right. As previously, I found myself having to half-jog to catch up. He stopped at the door, turning to me with a look as cold as death on his face. Time to honor our agreement, Michael. There was something about Mr. Elliot's use of my first name that utterly terrified me. He then proceeded to open the door. Hi, Mike. How was your first day? Hazel had an overly comfortable habit of walking around the apartment scantily dressed, to the extent that I had to, more often than not, mentally remind myself that this was my best friend's sister. Not tonight, though. My mind was elsewhere. Rough shift. I don't really want to talk about it. Oh, sorry to hear that. I hope it gets easier from now on. Thanks. Actually, I think I might go to that interview on Monday. Might be good to weigh out my options. Whatever works for you, Mike. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Just remember that rent's due again next month, okay? I was scarcely listening, though. Describing it as a rough first shift didn't do what I had seen and done any kind of justice at all. I didn't know what I had been expected to see when Elliot opened that door, but it turned out to be a scene that was now buried into my psyche forever.
This'll be a pretty tough cleanup, so take as much time as you need. Just make sure you do the job properly."
And at that, Elliot had turned and left. The room was poorly lit, so it was hard to make out what that coppery brown mess was that coated the walls. I'd followed Elliot's advice and put the suit on properly, meaning I was also using its breathing apparatus. Had I not done so, I would have by now recognized the stench of fresh blood. My eyes met a figure, dressed in what appeared to be a full butcher's garb, slowly but precisely removing what were clearly the last few remaining chunks of flesh from the corpse in front of him. Its arms and legs were strewn across the floor. The head had been removed and tossed aside. The butcher turns to face me. "I guess my accountant here has ripped me off for the last time," he said with a sarcastic chuckle. "Only fair I get to rip him apart, don't you think?" "Indeed it is, my good friend." I twisted around to see that Mr. Elliot had appeared at the doorway. "Let me introduce you to my new junior associate, Mr. Featherstone. He'll be performing cleanup duties this evening." "Good luck with that, kid." The butcher then slowly exhaled, stepping back from the remains of the corpse, and started to make his way out of the room. "Make sure you do the job right. I don't want a single trace of this scumbag left when you're done." "That is our guarantee, as always." Mr. Elliot then stepped aside to allow this murdering psychopath to exit the room, leaving me to survey the whole devastating scene. "Make sure you get this place spotless. Take as much time as you need," Elliot said, now directly facing me. "But I want this place so clean that you'd be able to eat your next meal off the floor in here. I'll be back in a couple of hours to see how you're getting on." He pointed to a mop and bucket in the corner, as well as a bunch of cleaning supplies. He then ignited the incinerator, randomly picking up a limb and tossing it inside, before once again leaving the room. "Okay then, Michael. Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, times are tough for all major multinational corporations, and the same goes for the fast food industry. We'd love to have you on board, but we'd have to start you on a 0-hour contract, minimum wage, of course. I'm pretty sure you'd be guaranteed at least 8 to 12 hours of work every week, maybe even more. After 2 or 3 years, you'll almost certainly be in line for a full-time position. So what do you say? You excited to join the Bandit Burger team?" "Who wouldn't be?" was all that I could say in response. "Great. Then we'll see you first thing tomorrow so you can pick up your new work clothes. Sorry to say that you'll be expected to buy them from the company, but you should earn enough in the first week or so to cover the cost." I offered the weakest of smiles in response. The following day, I, resigned to my fate, knocked on the office door. "Oh, there you are. So lovely to see you again." I had to chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. Yeah, glad to be back." "Raring to go, I assume?" I hesitantly replied with a question. Can I be honest with you?" "Why, of course." "I'm really just happy to have a job." "Absolutely no harm in that at all. We're glad to have you on board and fully committed, Mr. Featherstone. Let's get you fitted up with a bespoke hazmat suit, shall we?" I'm a bit of a nerd. I tend to hold on to that pretty tightly, since I don't really have anything else to go with. I don't have any friends, and I'm not athletic in the slightest, so I spend most of my time online watching fail videos on YouTube. I guess it's fun, but really, I just want a way to fill the time. I've been learning more about the dark web lately. It seems like every show for boomers is currently using it as some great faceless evil. If it scares my parents, even though they know nothing about it, then of course I'm going to be a little curious.
Some general research led me to downloading the Tor browser and doing some basic searching. The whole .onion thing at the end of web addresses seems super dumb, but whatever. It was exciting to be doing something that I knew my parents didn't want me to do. It's a thrill, and I don't have too many of those in my life. Most of the people in my school are going out and trying beer or hoping to get someone in their bed, and I'm goofing off on the dark web. I swear this isn't the origin of a serial killer. I'm just shy in social situations. Occasionally, the ads are pretty weird and messed up on Tor. So much porn, guns, white supremacists, survivalists. I haven't seen any human trafficking stuff, which, believe me, huge relief. The truth is, I'm pretty straight edge. Playing on the dark web is as dangerous as I get, and I like to stay in the safe areas. I just dip my toes in to feel that taste of excitement. Something has to fill the void of having no friends. So when I saw the ad that blared, "Program your own friend," in bright pink and red letters, with a fuzzy stuffed puppy pictured below it, I suppose I was pretty much the perfect target audience. I clicked on it. I went to a site that had lots of fluffy clouds and pictures of tons of different stuffed animals. It was like the place in the mall where you make your own stuffed animals, but way bigger. They had everything. Llamas, narwhals, platypuses, or are they platypi? Squid, a three-legged dog with a little set of wheels scaled to its size. There were even little baby doll-looking ones, but let's be real here. That's just creepy. In the middle of the page was a button that said, "Design your friend." I clicked on it, and it took me to a chat screen. Text started to appear on my screen. "Hello, friend. I can't wait to be your best friend and love you forever. I just need a little help to get to know you. Answer my questions, and I'll be able to be the best friend you've ever had. Are you ready to get started? Just type your answer below." I stared at the flashing cursor for a second before I decided that it couldn't hurt to play around with the design program. I didn't have to get anything. "I'm ready," I typed. "That's so wonderful. Let's get started. If you were to have the very bestest fuzzy friend ever, what animal would they be?" I thought for a minute. I wanted to say something fun. "A gorilla," I typed. "That's so fun. I love apes too. I am one, after all, because I'm going to be your very bestest friend ever. What color would your gorilla best friend be?" "Light purple," I typed immediately, getting into the process. "Such a wonderful color. Now, I want to be the very bestest friend I can be. What would you want me to be able to do to be your friend?" I thought for a moment. "Could you talk to me?" I typed. "Of course. Talking is what friends do, silly. What else?" "I'd like to be able to snuggle you." "I love snuggles. What else?" "Could you help me make my family pay more attention to me? They always ignore me and pay attention to my older brother," I typed. "I'd be happy to do that. What are bestest friends for, after all? What else?" "Can I take some more time to think about it?" "Of course. You can always tell me what else you need me to do after I've arrived, and I'll update myself. Also, I want to tell you about a super special offer. The people who help me be your very bestest friend are a new company and really need some customer reviews to show their product is great. You have been randomly selected to be a product tester. If you're willing to leave a detailed review of why I am the very bestest friend ever, then I can come be your friend for free. Is that okay?" I was so into the whole thing. My fingers answered almost as if they were on autopilot. "Yes." "Wonderful. If you give me your address, then I'll be there in 2 to 4 business days." I hesitated for a second, leery on giving out my address, but I figured it was public information anyway, and it wasn't like I'd given them my name, so it was probably okay. And honestly, I wanted a new friend. I typed in my address. "I can't wait to meet you. This chat will automatically close. A couple seconds later, it did. The wait was agonizing. I rushed home from school each day to see if I had a package, terrified of explaining it if my mom checked the mail first. Don't worry, Mom. I just gave our address out to a random website on the dark web. It's totally no big deal. Yeah, right. Finally, 3 agonizing business days later, when I checked the mail, there was a large box with our address. There was no name, although I hadn't given them one, so that makes sense. No return address either, but what else could it be? I ran up the stairs to my room and plopped the box down on the floor. Grabbing scissors off my desk, I sliced the box open. Inside, there was a large purple gorilla and a single sheet of paper. I grabbed the gorilla out of the box. It was amazing. It was so soft and squishy, and while I could feel thin wires running through it on the inside, there were no hard, chunky pieces in it like in all other talking, snuggling stuffed animals. I loved it already. "Hi," I said to it. Nothing. "Are you my new best friend?" Nothing. This was disappointing, but I guess it's still a cool stuffed animal. I reached back into the box and pulled out the sheet of paper. Across the top of it said, "How to turn on your new best friend for the first time." A part of me was intensely embarrassed that I had somehow not thought to immediately look for directions. Thankfully, no one had witnessed that dumb moment. The directions were pretty basic. There was a key phrase I had to speak, made up of random words that wouldn't usually be heard together so that he wouldn't get turned on by accident. I was just about to say the phrase when I heard my mom come home. She yelled from downstairs for me to come help set the table for dinner. I guess I would activate my new friend after dinner. Dinner seems to take forever. As soon as I was done washing the dishes, I ran up to my room. But then my mom yelled at me to do my homework, so I got that done. Then I had to take a shower, brush my teeth, take out the trash, and finally, everything was done, and it was time for bed. I told my parents and my brother good night and went to bed. I turned off the lights, grabbed my small flashlight and the stuffed gorilla, and went over to the bed. I whispered the key phrase. There was a pause, and then the gorilla's mouth swung open.
"Hello, I'm your very bestest friend,"
it said in a loud, cartoony voice. I jumped, startled by the sudden noise, and then rapidly threw the blankets over our head. "Can you be quieter?" I hissed.
"Of course. Anything to make you happy,"
the gorilla said in a volume just above a whisper. "Thank you."
"You're welcome, bestest buddy."
"So," I said, "is there anything else we need to do to get you up and running?"
"I'm all set. Want to snuggle?"
Its voice was so sweet, it sounded like tooth decay. Sure." I was not sure. The gorilla crawled up the blankets to my chest, curled up and snuggled down into me. The gentle weight and slight warmth felt really comforting. All the days of anticipation had really taken it out of me, and now I felt really at peace, like I wasn't alone anymore. Before I knew it, I had dozed off to sleep. When I woke up, the gorilla was gone. Gorilla?" I asked awkwardly, realizing I had never given it a name. It didn't respond. I looked around my room, but I couldn't see it anywhere. What I did see, though, was a chat screen open on my computer. "Good morning, bestest friend. I'm out running some errands, but you can talk to me by sending messages here, and I'll respond from wherever I am." "Where did you go?" I typed. "You told me during setup that you wanted my help making friends and having your family pay more attention to you than your older brother, right?" "Yeah," I typed. "Well, I'm working on the friend project. Do you know someone named Devin?" He's in my bio class." "He's headed over to your house right now. He wants to hang out. You'll probably be hearing my knocking in just a minute or two.
Devin never wanted anything to do with me. That was weird. I guess the gorilla was an amazing persuader. Okay. Odd choice, but cool. I typed.
Don't worry. I'll help you make even more friends.
There was a knock on the door. Be right back, I typed. I ran downstairs and pulled open the door. It was Devin. He was shaking. His face was pale.
Devin, are you okay?
I asked. I'm here to hang out, he forced out, his voice quivering. I brought him inside and shut the door. Dude, what's wrong? I asked. It's got my family, man. What? What's got your family? The purple gorilla. His voice was almost a whisper. He has them tied up in our basement. He said if I didn't come over to hang out, and if you didn't have a great time, he'd kill all of them. And then he... Devin was overcome with emotion and started sobbing. I reached out to put my hand on his shoulder, but he shrugged it off. He hurt them, man, Devin said. Just to prove he meant business. He hurt them. There was so much blood. It was everywhere. Stay right here. I'll be right back, I said. I ran upstairs and back to my room, fell into my computer chair, and started typing. What are you doing? I typed.
Helping you make friends. Everyone will love you as much as I do.
You hurt Devin's family.
I had to. Devin didn't understand, and he needed to understand. Now he's your friend.
This isn't right.
This is what you wanted to have so you could be happy. I also talked to your family, and them paying too much attention to your brother will no longer be a problem. In fact, they won't be able to stop paying attention to you now. They're in the living room. Go see. I'll be home soon.
I shoved away from my desk and ran back downstairs. In the living room, I saw something that will be buried into my memory for the rest of my life. My brother was on the ground, not moving, with purple blotches on his neck and a gray tint to his face. He wasn't breathing. My parents sat in chairs, ropes tied around their arms and midsections, tape across their mouths. They seemed to be looking at everything very intently. It took me a moment to figure out why. The gorilla was right. They wouldn't be able to stop watching me without eyelids. The front door opened, and the light purple gorilla walked in.
Hello, my very bestest friend,
It said.
I hope you liked your surprises. I would be very sad if you didn't like them, and I don't think you'd like me very much when I'm sad.
And with that, the light purple gorilla turned and walked up the stairs.